Taiwan's vice president as a troublemaker following his trip to the United States. And the search continues in the aftermath of the devastating blaze that reduced Maui to ashes. Reports say that the wildfire is now the deadliest in the modern U.S. history. This and more for tonight's edition of Newsline World. First in our news, Pastor Apollo C. Cablelink gave his reaction on the issue of Filipinos being called traitors for explaining China's actions in the aftermath of the Ayungin Shoal incident. Meanwhile, the good pastor said that the leaders of the government should always prioritize the interests of the Philippines. This story from Jade Calabroso.
Para po sa bansa kasi nation building tayo.
Amen.
Wala tayong ibang itinatanghal dito kundi ang interes ng ating sariling bansa.
Pastor Apollo C. Cablelink repeatedly emphasized in the latest episode of Spotlight on Monday that the only goal should be what is beneficial for the Philippines' interests. This is especially important for Filipinos, particularly the country's leaders. This follows a statement from a government official that anyone defending China after the confrontation between the Chinese Coast Guard and Philippine vessels can be considered unpatriotic traitors. However, according to Pastor Apollo, this shouldn't be the perspective regarding the issue. He mentioned that if it were up to him, China is a friend, but it doesn't mean that he sides with its interests.
Hindi naman tayo pro-China, friend of China.
Yes.
But I'm not pro-China, I'm pro-Filipino.
Wow. Yes.
Pro-Philippines ako.
Yes.
What? Friend of China.
Yes.
Oh. If China initiated friendship with me, who am I to reject it? Silang umuna, nakipagkaibigan sa akin. Di ba?
Yes.
Oh.
It's worth remembering that recently the Chinese Coast Guard used water cannons against the Philippine Coast Guard and two boats delivering supplies to soldiers stationed at Ayungin Shoal. This has caused tensions to rise again between the Philippines and China regarding the disputed Ayungin Shoal. Pastor Apollo himself stated that President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. referred to the area as a gray area.
Now, ang ating Pangulong Bongbong Marcos mismo ang nagsabi na yung Ayungin Shoal na yan ay gray area. Ang ibig sabihin, maraming umaangkin, nagkiklaim, claimant 5. Tayo, China, Vietnam, Malaysia, Indonesia, Brunei. Hindi lang iisa o dalawa ang claimant. Tayong lahat nagkiklaim.
Yes.
Kasi overlapping ang ating mga economic zones.
Yes.
According to Pastor Apollo, it's better to focus on Philippine territory.
Kaya disputed waters.
Yes.
Disputed yan. Wag muna tayong magbarahas na atin yan.
Yes.
Wala pa yun, hindi pa yun final. Oh, ngayon, ang final na teritoryo natin, Pilipinas.
Yes.
Ito talagang maliwanag. Luzon, Visayas, Mindanao. Maliwanag.
Meanwhile, Pastor Apollo questioned why some government officials, if they're truly patriotic, allow foreign camps to exist in the Philippines.
O kung patriotic tayo, tulad ng sinasabi ninyo, hindi lang pinagagawa ng ating teritoryo eh. In-offer pa natin eh. Pinapasok pa natin eh. Pinagawa pa natin sila ng kampo dito sa ating teritoryo eh. Atin ito eh. Ngayon, eto ang siste, mga kaibigan. Teritoryo natin, ibinigay natin, kusang loob, masaya ang puso natin. Patriotic ba tayo? Hindi.
Amen.
Eh, yung gray area, magkakamatayan na tayo eh. Kasi inagaw ng iba eh. Oh, ito kusang loob, binigay pa natin eh. Oh, maka-in and out sila, tayo hindi. Pero lupa natin.
Yes.
Oh my God. Hello.
Concerning this, Pastor Apollo also questioned the outspokenness of some government officials about the actions of the CCG while being quiet about the violence caused by communist terrorist groups in the country.
Pero mga magigiting at magagaling nating mga leader, walang sinasabi sa binubuga sa atin ng CPP, NPA, NDF.
Yes.
Pinatay na ang more than 50,000 ng binubuga, hindi tubig, bala. Panununog, gasolina ang binubuga sa mga establishmento natin. At napakarami na namatay. Dito wala namang namatay. Naligo lang.
Libre ligo.
Di ba? Ganun lang yun.
Meanwhile, Pastor Apollo reiterated his respect for leaders who don't submit to foreign nations like former President Rodrigo Duterte.
Ano ba ang relationship mo sa kanya? Isang presidente ito, isang presidente. Anong relationship niyo sa kanya? Inuto-uto ka ba niya? Tinuta ka niya? Pag nagpatuta kayo at binoto ko kayo, ibang usapin yun. Hindi ko kayo re-respetuhin. I tell you, kaya malaking respeto ko kay Pangulong Digo.
Yes.
Bakit? Tumayo siya sa sarili niya.
Yes.
For God and my beloved Philippines, this has been Jade Calabroso, SMNI News.
In other news, Australia and the Philippines held their first ever bilateral amphibious exercise in Philippine waters. Shayna Salim has the details.
Australia's forces are officially taking part in Exercise Alon 2023, a bilateral exercise that will run for 2 weeks from August 14 to 31. Australia's largest warship, HMS Canberra, will take part in the joint drills to be held at various training locations in the Northern Luzon Command and Western Command. The $1.5 billion, 27,800-ton behemoth is capable of holding 18 helicopters and conducting large-scale humanitarian missions. The military vessel focuses on regional military support, including disasters, evacuation missions, peacekeeping, and extreme natural disasters at home. The joint naval exercise between Australia and the Philippines will take place on August 17 and 18 in the Sulu Sea, close to the South China Sea. Participating countries include the US, Canada, Japan, Singapore, Indonesia, Malaysia, Bangladesh, Brunei, Maldives, Mongolia, Nepal, Sri Lanka, and Timor-Leste. The exercise is part of a joint bilateral amphibious activity between the Australian Defence Forces and Armed Forces of the Philippines. The exercise will also include humanitarian assistance and disaster relief training, gender, peace and security activities, and seminars, among others. Reporting from New South Wales, this is Shayna Salim, SMNI News, Australia.
The U.S. Navy has started training Marines and sailors to be deployed in the waters of the Persian Gulf amid heightened tensions with Iran. Melchizedek Cadiz has the details.
Assalamu alaikum. The United States Naval Institute, or USNI, announced that a force of 100 newly trained Marines have completed their training and are ready to be deployed in the state of Hormuz if ordered. The training took place more than a week after more than 3,000 U.S. sailors and Marines aboard 2 warships have entered Red Sea. The trained personnel are members of the 26th Marine Expeditionary Unit and were flown off from Europe to Bahrain to be trained as ship security teams. Additional teams of sailors already deployed or stationed in the U.S. Central Command region were also undergoing the training. The move is intended to thwart any moves by Iran's maritime forces, notably its Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy, from seizing foreign vessels in the Gulf waters. Aside from the U.S. military personnel, the U.S. has also deployed F-35 and F-16 fighter jets to the region in recent weeks. In response to the U.S. military buildup, Iran warned it could capture American vessels or fire its new Abu Mahdi missile as part of necessary measures to protect itself. The Islamic Republic also blamed the U.S. of defending smuggling activities in the Gulf region by interfering with its investigation on foreign vessels accused of transporting or stealing smuggled oil and gas in the strategic waterway. The rising tensions and military buildup in the Persian Gulf led Western observers to compare the scenario in the 1980s when U.S. warships were deployed to the region at the height of the military conflict between Iran and Iraq. Barakalafikum Jamian, Kanhada Melkisedek Kadi sa Akhbar SMNI, Kuwait.
Taiwan's defense ministry confirmed it has not witnessed large-scale exercises or any action from the Chinese military days after the Taiwanese president made a brief visit to the United States. And Isabela Guzman has the details.
China's foreign ministry criticized Taiwanese Vice President William Lai's recent visit to the United States and warned to take strong steps to protect its sovereignty. China labeled Lai a troublemaker after visiting the United States on his way to Paraguay late on Saturday. His trip includes another stopover in San Francisco on Wednesday on his way home. Lai is a frontrunner in Taiwan's upcoming presidential elections to be held in January next year. His visit to the United States triggered rumors of potential military drills by Chinese troops near Taiwan this week. So far, the expectation has never manifested. The United States has no formal diplomatic relations with Taiwan, but has been supporting the self-ruled island with military weapons and maintain informal ties. The Biden administration also pledged to defend Taiwan in an event of a Chinese invasion, although it is not yet clear whether American forces would be sent to the self-ruled island. China urged countries having diplomatic ties with Beijing to stop any official interaction with the Taiwan authorities and stop sending wrong signals to the separatist forces in the self-ruled island after a parliamentary delegation from Latvia, Estonia, and Lithuania paid a visit to the self-ruled island last week. Di siya nanisa di Guzman, Rangan Chakuntep Mahanakon, SMNI News, Pratatay, Sawadika.
Thailand's election winner, Move Forward Party, will not vote for its former allies candidate for Prime Minister. Chatmon Kompisamagasan reports.
Move Forward Secretary General Chaitawat Tulaton revealed that the party does not have plans on supporting Pheu Thai's candidate for Prime Minister just weeks after both parties ended their alliance. The decision could prolong months of political deadlock and complicate efforts in finding a new prime minister. Pheu Thai, a populist party linked to billionaire and self-exiled former Prime Minister Thaksin Shinawatra, won the second highest number of votes after Move Forward Party during the May 14 elections. Both parties form a coalition that consists of 8 political parties. Despite a short-lived rift over the House speakership role, the coalition blossomed and offered a promising future of forming a new government. However, even the partnership itself proved to be short-lived after Pheu Thai decided to break away from the alliance earlier this month and form a coalition of its own. The coalition now involves 9 political parties, with real estate tycoon Sethar Thavisin as their candidate to become the next prime minister. Pheu Thai's deputy leader expressed confidence that the selection of prime minister with Sethar Thavisin as their candidate will be over in just one sitting. รายงานจากราชบุรี นายชัดมงคลพิสมัยโกศล SMNI News ประเทศไทย สวัสดีครับ
Death toll from the devastating wildfires in the Hawaiian island in Maui continues to rise by the day. A search for the missing and the dead continues. Let's find out more on Sasha Haza's report.
The deadly blazes that killed dozens in Maui is now the largest natural disaster in the history of Hawaii as a U.S. state. Officials reported that searchers and cadaver dogs have covered at least 25% of the affected zone. Survivors who have escaped the raging inferno are trying to survive from the threat of looters stealing people at gunpoint. Residents claim they have no official warning moments before the fire razed neighborhoods in Maui into ashes as they question the effectiveness of emergency response and wondered whether more people could have been saved. Survivors are trying to pick up the pieces of whatever little remained of their worldly possessions as they share their stories of escape and loss. Meanwhile, the Philippine Consulate General in Honolulu said they are yet to release a clear breakdown of casualties in Maui as flames in major areas are still not fully contained since it erupted on the 8th of August. The breakdown of casualties was not classified in accordance to ethnicity or citizenship, hence making the identification of casualties a challenge to authorities. The death toll is almost certain to rise, with damages estimated at nearly $6 billion as of date. Reporting from Sydney, this has been Sasha Hasa, SMNI News, Australia.
In Japan, thousands of people were told to seek safety and evacuate their homes as Typhoon Len made its landfall in the country. Ken Hashimoto files this report.
240,000 people were ordered to evacuate and nearly 900 flights were cancelled as a strong, slow-moving typhoon arrived in Japan, cutting off the power of tens of thousands of homes. Typhoon Lan approached from the Pacific Ocean and made its landfall at the southern tip of Wakayama Prefecture, 400 kilometers southwest of Tokyo, bringing heavy rain and powerful winds to Japan's central and western areas. With tornadoes forming, the authorities issued flood and landslide warnings. The Japanese Disaster Management Agency told residents to seek shelter, setting up evacuation centers and safe buildings and high grounds for residents across 11 prefectures. The heavy rain and winds also forced the closure of some roads and suspension of dozens of train services. The central region is expected to get about 350 millimeters of rain, nearly 3 times the average rainfall for the month of August, just in the next 24 hours. In Nara City, some home and businesses suffered water damage. Some people were even knocked down by the wind. Around 90,000 households in central and western parts of the country also lost power. According to Japan's weather agency, the typhoon has sustained winds of 100 kilometers per hour and was moving northwest across the main island of Honshu at around 15 kilometers per hour. It was forecast to reach the Sea of Japan by early Wednesday and move north. Ijo Nihon kara Noshimoto Kento deshita. SMNI News, Japan.
In other news, the amendments to the military and other uniformed personnel or MUP pension system are now being deliberated in Congress. MJ Mondihar reports from the Philippine House of Representatives.
We're working hard on making sure that we have a pension plan both for the AFP and for the police na maging self-sustaining.
Last May, President Bongbong Marcos mentioned his plan to amend the military and uniformed personnel or MUP pension system. The Philippine government's annual expenditures on this system are reportedly substantial, and the president has emphasized that failure to address this issue could adversely affect the country's uniformed workers.
Kasi kung ganito pabawas na ng pabawas ang pondo niyan, after a while mauubos na yan. Ang prediction ko, if we keep going the way we do, within 5-6 years, wala na, we will have to do something else. So,
consequently, Congress is taking action to implement the president's plan. On Tuesday morning, August 15, the Ad Hoc Committee on Military and Uniformed Personnel Pension System convened for this purpose. But before the hearing, the administration's economic team held consultation meetings. Given the crucial nature of the issue, as the pensions of those who sacrificed their lives are at stake.
The team conducted over 30 roadshow consultations, focus group discussions, and technical working group meetings with various service branches of the AFP, PNP, BFP, BJMP, Bucor, and NAMRIA across the country.
The MUP pension issue posed a challenge to the government, especially since former President Rodrigo Duterte doubled the salaries of police and military personnel in 2018. While this was a commendable move, the budget source remained a challenge. However, during the current congressional hearing, an agreement was reached to establish an MUP trust fund. It was ensured that there would be no reduction in the pensions received by MUPs. Approved provisions include retaining the promotion of one rank higher upon retirement, adjustments to longevity pay and lump sum benefits, a 3% annual increase in salary, pension indexations, and gradual contribution increments. According to Ad Hoc Committee Chair Joey Salceda, all concerned sectors have agreed to contribute towards pension fund. The collected funds will be augmented by the national government.
Magre-retire at 57. Lahat ang kanila pong pensyon based on 90% ng kanilang base pay and longevity pay. Lahat pwede mag-optional retirement at 20 na meron din pare-parehas din times 1 month, hindi na 1.25, 175, 2.5, iisa na rin. Magko-contribute din sila like everybody else in public service. Nang 9 sa kanila, 12 sa national government. Kung isipin nga, mas Dahil dito, mas malaki po ang ilalaan ng gobyerno para sa MUP, para sa military and uniformed personnel, ng halos 70 billion para po sa counterpart ng government. So, sa bawat pisong ilalagay nila, maglalagay ng government ng 150. So, lamang pa po sila.
With that, lawmakers here at the House of Representatives are hoping that the senators will be supporting their own version of the bill. For Vigan of Philippines, MJ Mondehar, SMNI News.
The Marcos administration has an effective way to attract more foreign investors in the Philippines. Jason Rubrico has the details.
From 2 to 3 months, it will only take 2 to 3 days to conduct Regulatory Impact Assessment or RIA training. That's after the Anti-Red Tape Authority or ARTA launched the new Regulatory Impact Assessment Training Workbook. By Section 17 of the Republic Act 11032 or the Ease of Doing Business, the purpose of the said training is to help government agencies speed up and improve their processes so that they can serve the public more effectively. The said training workbook contains more practical and concise explanations that will be better understood by government agencies for conducting RIA. ARTA Secretary Ernesto Perez believes that more foreign investors will be attracted to invest in the Philippines, which is one of the aspirations of President Bongbong Marcos.
Let's observe RIA, because by observing RIA in our regulatory making process, mag-improve po yung ating regulatory management system, makaka-attract po tayo ng investors. Kailangan po natin investors. At ang una pong nasa isip ng investor when they decide to invest in the country is their ease of doing business in the Philippines.
4 agencies have already volunteered to be trained by ARTA using the new workbook. These include the Department of Health, Games and Amusement Board, Land Transportation Office, and the Department of Interior and Local Government. Based on ARTA data, 275 agencies have undergone training through RIA manual. And it will be expected that through the new workbook, there will be more government agencies that will have a proper public service process.
Mas lalo nating mapapabilis, no? Kagaya yan, mag-umpisa tayo sa 4 na ahensya, in 2 to 3 days we'll finish it. Yung 270 na yun, we were able to do it in about 2 years. Siguro in 1 year, at the pace we're doing it, in the 2 to 3 days, we can have actually double it in less than a year maybe.
The Marcos administration has already declared that the government shall remain steadfast and continue to pursue streamlining initiatives to ensure the delivery of efficient government services to the people and fight corruption by eradicating all forms of red tape. For God and my beloved Philippines, I am Jason Rubrico, SMNI News.
More news when Newsline World returns. we're back for more news. Recently, prosecutors in Atlanta charged former United States President Donald Trump and several others for meddling in the Georgia 2020 elections. Fulton County District Attorney Fannie Willis presented a Georgia grand jury Monday with the election interference case against Trump and his allies for attempts to overturn President Joe Biden's victory in the state of Georgia in the 2020 elections. The hearing reportedly lasted for 10 hours before a decision was reached. This brings the total number of criminal charges Trump is currently facing across 4 separate cases to 91. Included in Monday's charges are violating Georgia's Racketeer Influence and Corrupt Organizations or RICO Act, punishable by a maximum of 20 years in prison, solicitation of violation of oath by a public officer, conspiracy to impersonate a public officer, conspiracy to commit forgery in the first degree, and false statements in writings and filing false documents. However, Trump, the GOP frontrunner, denies any wrongdoing. Meanwhile, according to Willis, all 19 co-defendants must surrender by noon August 25th. She said she plans to try all 19 accused together. To recall, in his first campaign since the August 1st, 2023 indictment, the former president questioned why it was only made now and not 2.5 years ago. Trump also accused the Biden administration of election interference. In other news, a second politician has been assassinated in Ecuador just less than a week after presidential candidate Fernando Villavicencio was killed. Margaret Percasio files this report.
On Monday, Pedro Briones, leader of the leftist political party Revolucion Ciudadana, was brutally shot at his home in San Mateo, Ecuador, bringing the number of political assassinations in the past month to 3. Neither the police nor the government immediately confirmed the attack, but Ecuadorian presidential candidate Luis Gonzalez on Monday announced his death on social media platform X, formerly known as Twitter. Gonzalez, front-runner in Ecuador's presidential election, said the country is experiencing its bloodiest era and that the state had been taken over by mafias. This marks the third political-related slayings within the past 4 weeks after the death of presidential candidate Fernando Villavicencio on the 9th of August and Mayor Agustin Entriago of Manta on 26th of July. Reports say that Briones was attacked by 2 men on a motorcycle who later fled the scene. To note, the first round of the presidential elections is just days away. Currently, investigations into all of the said 3 attacks are ongoing. Meanwhile, Guayaquil experienced another day of threats and attacks when a group of inmates from the regional prison climbed to the roofs of the center with painted fabrics, asking for the return of Jose Adolfo Macias alias Fido, leader of the criminal gang Los Choneros, after he was moved to a maximum security prison over the weekend. Ecuador is scheduled to hold early presidential and National Assembly elections on the 20th of August, which will determine the country's president, vice president, and 137 members of the parliament. As the election draw near, Ecuador has experienced a surge in violence incidents. The government of Ecuador has stated that this act of violence are closely linked to organized crime and drug trafficking activities in the country. This is Margaret Percasio reporting, SMNI News.
In other news, President Zelenskyy calls for national unity and backing of soldiers as Ukraine confronts conflict. He also told Ukrainians to stop going to bars and clubs amid the conflict. Jane Cudita reports.
In a recent video address, Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelenskyy emphasized the importance of national unity and support for soldiers engaged in the ongoing conflict with Russia and called on civilians not directly involved in frontline fighting to contribute to the war effort by refraining from leisure activities like bars and clubs. Zelenskyy stressed that Ukraine is currently in a state of war, and while not everyone can be on the front lines, every citizen has a role to play.
Всі на війні, Україна у війні. І хто не б'ється на передовій, той має допомагати битись. І не у барах, не в клубах, не перегонами на вулицях, чи якимось там показовим споживанням, а цілком конкретною допомогою воїнам. Це щонайменше увесь адреналін країни, всі емоції країни, всі сили країни мають бути там, бо як.
The Ukrainian president's words came after a video of Ukrainians partying at a beach club has gone viral amid a huge international debate whether or not the West should support any more funding to help Ukraine in its fight against Russia. The video shows hundreds of Ukrainians partying around the pool bar at 50 Beach Club in Kyiv with a caption, "Beach Club in Kyiv during the war." The video garnered millions of views and earned severe backlash from netizens. It can be noted that since the conflict broke out in February 2022, the United States has pledged more than $60 billion in aid to Ukraine, which is the most out of any of Ukraine's allies in the West. Completing a tour of several military units currently on the Donetsk front, including Azov and Aidar units, reports say Zelenskyy aims to boost their morale and talk about topics like how the commanders can better manage and motivate their personnel. Zelenskyy's address also follows recent revelations of corruption within the military recruitment system, where fraudulent medical exemption certificates were being sold to evade conscription. In response to mounting casualties, recruitment centers have issued blanket orders for all eligible men to report for duty in regions facing heightened conflict. Reporting, this has been Jane Conita, SMNI News.
Newsline World will be back after the break. Now we're back for more update. The Department of Tourism, or DOT, proudly announced during their 2024 budget hearing at the House of Representatives that they are close to achieving the target for foreign tourist arrivals in the Philippines. DOT's target for this year is to have 4.8 million foreign tourists visiting the Philippines. Jade Calabroso has the details.
The Department of Tourism said it will not only meet but exceed this year's target for international tourist arrivals. This comes as a result of the easing of domestic and international borders following the Philippines' recovery from the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. During the budget briefing of the Department of Tourism at the House of Representatives on Tuesday, Secretary Cristina Frasco reported that the Philippines recorded over 3.4 million foreign tourist arrivals from January to August 14 of this year. This is higher compared to the total number of foreign tourist arrivals in the country for the entire year of 2022. Frasco's report also represents 71% of the country's target of 4.8 million foreign tourist arrivals this year.
Since we still have a few more months to go, with the holidays upcoming as well, we anticipate and are very optimistic that we would not only be able to meet the goals by the end of this year, but also exceed it.
U.S. citizens topped the list of foreign arrivals in the Philippines, followed by South Koreans, Australians, Canadians, and British visitors. According to Secretary Frasco, the tourism sector has made a significant contribution to the growth of the Philippine economy, contributing a total of 1.87 trillion peso in 2022, based on the data released by the Philippine Statistics Authority, or PSA. This includes 368.67 billion pesos in foreign receipts and 1.5 trillion pesos in domestic receipts.
In the recent joint statement issued by the economic managers of the administration, they have identified tourism as the second top economic growth driver in the first half of 2023. According to the Philippine Statistics Authority, tourism contributed 6.2% of our GDP in 2022. This growth in our GDP and a recovery towards the GDP contribution that we had in 2019 evinces the contribution that tourism has had in all sectors of society, even the indirectly employed by tourism.
The tourism sector has significant contribution to the Philippine economy and the labor sector by providing jobs for 5.35 million people in 2022.
In 2019, the tourism industry employed 5.7 million Filipinos. That number reduced by 1 million in 2020 due to the pandemic. And since then, we have recovered 5.35 million, a remarkable 93% recovery of tourism employment comparative to 2019.
Under the 2024 National Expenditure Program, the proposed budget for the Department of Tourism is over 2.99 billion pesos. This is 20% lower compared to the budget allocated in 2023, which was over 3.7 billion pesos for the same department. For God and my beloved Philippines, this has been Jade Calabroso, SMNI News.
Meanwhile, for those seeking affordable and distinct postpaid plans with unique promotions compared to previous telco providers, we have exciting news for you. Let's find out more about this with MJ Mondehar.
The third telecommunications player in the country, Dito Telecom, continues to make strides. Since its launch in 2019, Dito has made significant progress. Former President Rodrigo Duterte, now hosting his own TV program on SMNI, approved Dito's establishment to break the duopoly between the two existing telco companies. The aim was to offer Filipinos more choices and not confine them to just two telcos. And in less than 5 years since operating in the Philippines, Dito has now introduced its postpaid plans. The launch took place at a prominent restaurant in BGC Taguig on Monday evening, August 14. The company said it created Dito Flex plans to democratize postpaid services for Filipinos.
Whether you can afford 500 or whether you can afford more than 1,000, we will have the plan for you.
Dito offers a unique feature for those opting for postpaid plans wherein customers automatically receive a 40% discount after paying their monthly bill in advance.
We believe in the service so much that we have good service We'll lower the price because we know once you try our service, it's very reasonable.
But Dito's offer doesn't stop there. It also introduced Dito to Dito calls, where now internet data is deducted when making video calls between Dito users. This feature is referred to as Video over LTE or VIL LTE.
Dito to Dito phone, you can have video calls unlimited. So if you have a loved one or someone that, it's important, makausap kayo ng matagal or all the time, regardless of your load, basta Dito to Dito, it's unlimited, it's a video call, the quality is really superior kasi embedded na yun sa system namin eh.
For those interested in subscribing to Dito and its offers, simply visit their official social media accounts and website at dito.ph/postpaid. You can also download their mobile app on your smartphone. And as Dito also said, they're committed to contributing to nation building. And how do they plan to achieve this?
So this is how you build a nation, by helping build up small businesses, helping families. That's how we're doing it. One family, one business at a time.
For Ganamabilog Philippines, MJ Mondihar, SMNI News.
In the latest episode of Spotlight, Pastor Apollo C. Kibuloy said it is his goal for the Philippines to be a first world superpower country and that overseas Filipino workers will return to the Philippines and be patriotic. More of this from Sarah Santos.
May goal ako. No, may goal ako. Ay mawa sa bansang Pilipinas, may goal ako. Ang goal ko, ang bansang Pilipinas maging superpower. Wow. Ang goal ko, maging first world country tayo. Ang goal ko, maging independent tayo sa ating lahat ng desisyong gagawin. Basta't ikabubuti ng ating bansa at wala akong papayagang manghihimasok para madiskaril ang ating goal na ating tinataguyod at tinatangkilik.
This was the introductory message of Pastor Apollo C. Kibuloy in the latest episode of Spotlight on Monday, August 14th. The said episode centered on Pastor Apollo's vision for the country, which involves all overseas Filipino workers or OFWs, the Philippines' modern-day heroes, to return to the Philippines and find work domestically. This is similar to the wish of President Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos when he gave his second State of the Nation address on the 24th of July, and he said, and I quote, "It is our wish that one day foreign employment will be driven by choice, not by necessity." The Philippine Department of Labor and Employment, or DOLE, reported at the end of July 2023 that there is an estimated 2.3 million overseas Filipino workers or OFWs working abroad, according to recent data DOLE has gathered from the Philippine Statistics Authority or PSA. Unfortunately, not all of the Philippines' modern-day heroes are given good working conditions abroad. Some face difficult situations and are abused by their employers, while some work longer hours than what is stated in their contract. In worse stories, others even get raped and murdered, like the case of Julie Biranara in Kuwait, as reported earlier this year. Part of the reason why Pastor Apollo said,
"Ang goal ko, ang lahat ng Pilipino, OFWs, bumalik na sa bansang Pilipinas. At dito na sila makahanap ng trabaho. Amen. Para wala na yung problema natin na para tayong mga pabiktima palagi."
Meanwhile, as of now, the Philippines is currently the second largest rice importing country in the world, with 3.9 million metric tons of rice imports in the 2022-2023 marketing year, as shown in the data from Statista. In line with this, Pastor Apollo also wishes for the Philippines to be the #1 rice-producing country in the world.
Gusto ko, sa goal ko, ang Pilipinas maging rice-producing country, #1. Wow. Rice-producing country in the world na hindi na ako mag-i-import pa. Pwede ako mag-export, pero hindi ako mag-i-import. Sa kagandahan ng ating bansa, gusto ko ang lahat ng klaseng prutas nandirito makikita sa bansa ito.
Fruit basket.
Goal ko yun. Di ang lahat ng mga Pilipinong merong ganong damdamin, halika kayo lahat. Makisama tayo sa goal na ito. At hanggang hindi natin ma-achieve ito, hindi tayo hihinto.
Furthermore, Pastor Apollo talked about true patriotism, patriotic in heart and only for the Philippines.
At ang goal ko, lahat ay maging patriotic ang Pilipino. Unang-una, patriotic sa puso. Na para lang talaga sa Pilipinas sila. Kaibigan natin ng lahat. Pero hindi tayo tuta ni numan. Pero kaibigan natin lahat. Pero never, ang goal ko, maging tuta ang Pilipino kanino man. At sila ay naglilingkod sa interes ng ibang mga lahi kaysa interes ng kanilang bansa. Yun ang aking pangunahing goal. Na kung ano ang nakita nilang maganda sa ibang bansa, itong lahat ay mailipat dito. At ang kung ano ang nakita nila, bakit sila doon pumupunta at nag-invest, dapat makita nila dito at dito na sila bumalik. Yan ang tunay na pagkakaroon ng dignidad para sa ating mga sarili. Na hindi na tayo kukulangin pa sa pinansyal. Na kung sasabihin mong yung bansang yun pinakamayaman, gusto ko mas mayaman pa ang Pilipinas doon. Yun ang goal ko.
These are all similar to Pastor Apollo's vision for the kingdom nation. The good pastor stressed the importance of having a direction and a goal because as the word of God says, without vision, the people perish.
Ganon din ang goal ko sa bansang Korea. Kaya nakikita ninyo, ang bansang Korea may direksyon. Merong goal. Merong short-term goal, may long-term goal. Ang bansang Korea. May tinatahak akong blueprint para makuha ko yung goal na yun. And when we have that goal, when we have that vision, the Word of God says, you know, what your mind can conceive, you can achieve. I'm talking faith na. Yung iba siguro hindi nakakaintindi kung ano yung pananampalataya. Pananampalataya is calling the things that are not as though they are. At ang Bible din na nagsasabi, without vision, the people perish.
For God and my beloved Philippines, this has been Sarah Santos, SMNI News.
Pastor Apollo also talked about the ongoing conflict between Russia and Ukraine and said that both parties to find a peaceful solution without any interference. The good pastor also delved into the years of persecution of Russian-speaking Ukrainians in Donbas, a persistent problem that has not been covered by the Western media, and as to why Putin launched what he calls a special military operation to demilitarize and densify Ukraine. Let's find out more about this with Angel Pastor.
Go back to the root of the problem without interference from others.
This is what Pastor Apollo Sikibuloy said when asked on how the situation between Russia and Ukraine be solved as the conflict grinds on for more than a year since it first broke out in February 24, 2022. The good pastor believes that the problem can only be solved by going back to its root cause.
USSR was one. And Ukraine is part of the United Soviet Socialist Republic. They are only one. Like the US, all states are one. This is the USSR, Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. And Ukraine is one of them. And they are borders only with Russian land. So they are considered brothers. So, during that time, there is no boundary between Russia and Ukraine. So, Russian-speaking people also are now in the boundary we call Ukraine. When there was already the dismantling of the USSR. They all became states by themselves. They all became nations by themselves. That's why there's already a demarcation between Russian land and Ukraine land. But during the USSR period, there are only one.
The good pastor also delved into the years of persecution of Russian-speaking Ukrainians in Donbas, a persisting problem that has not been covered by the Western media.
So there are Russian-speaking people now who are in the Ukrainian territories. We call Donbas region, which is Luhansk, Donetsk, and other like Zaporizhia or others. They are the ones that are still speaking Russian. Because once upon a time, they were together. And so, now, nagkaroon ng conflict dyan because Ukraine wanted to really become identified by their own culture. Separating them from Russian culture. They went to the extreme of saying, we don't want to hear Russian-speaking people here. Don't speak Russian here. Culture of Russia here. No more, no more, no more, no more. Separate. How can you separate this? These are Russian-speaking people that are in the territory of Ukraine called Donbas. That's why they were persecuted before. And it was not reported in the Western media that these Donbas Russian-speaking people now in the territory of Ukraine have been persecuted. They were bombed by the Zelenskyy government. 14,000 na yung namatay dyan.
After years of persecution and shelling faced by Russian-speaking Ukrainians in Donbas, Pastor said that the calls for help has long been endured by the Russian Federation under the leadership of President Vladimir Putin.
Nagrereklamo sila ngayon doon kay Putin. Tulungan mo naman kami kasi mga Russian kami. Magkatabi lang tayo. 14 years tiniis ni Putin yan. 8 years ba yun? Tiniis niya. Hanggang sa gumawa sila ng tinatawag na agreement. Si Zelenskyy initialed it. Yung Minsk agreement. Na they still belong to Ukraine, pero parang autonomous sila.
Pastor Apollo also delved into Ukraine's agonization over Russian culture and language within its social fabric. Based on the 2001 Ukrainian consensus, about a third of Ukrainians have named the Russian language as their mother tongue, and in more recent surveys, majority of Ukrainians say they speak Russian.
Autonomous, but they still belong there. Pero huwag niyo galawin ang kanilang lingwahe kasi Russian sila, pati yung kultura nila. Yun ang gustong erasin ng Zelenskyy ng Ukraine. Di doon nagkaroon ng conflict, nag-away na. Dito sila nagpapatulong kay Putin. Ganon din doon sa Crimea. Russian-speaking din ang mga tao doon. Ganon din ang ginagawa. Pine-persecute sila. Kung ayaw niyo dito, balik kayo sa Russia. Paano lang iwan lupa nila yun?
The failure of the Minsk agreements caused by what Pastor Apollo described as meddlers were also among the key reasons as to why the Russia-Ukraine situation spiraled out of control and is now what Europe describes as the largest crisis since the World War II. The good pastor was referring to 2 Minsk agreements that were crafted in an effort to solve the ethnic conflict between Russians and Ukrainians in Ukraine. However, both agreements failed.
Pero pumasok itong tagapaggulo. Ayaw niya. Kami susuporta sa iyo. Basta wag yan.
The good pastor said Ukraine has become a proxy war between Russia and the West and how the current leadership of Ukraine was pressured.
Ginawang proxy war ngayon. Siya ginamit. Na-pressure siya. Kasi hindi naman siya statesman o politician. Comedian siya. Nadala. Nang nadala siya, ayun, pinagpatuloy. Hanggang itong mga nagrereklamo, pinapatay. Napuno ngayon si Vladimir Putin. Ang ginawa niya, sabi niya, alisin natin sa isang military operations itong mga nanggugulong mga neo-Nazis. Alam niyo sa World War II, ang Russia at ang Germany, kaaway yan. Pati na yung mga allies. Pero ang maraming namatay talaga para sa World War at ang nakapanalo talaga sa World War, hindi yung British o Amerika, ang Russia. 30 million people ang namatay sa Russia para salubungin lang si Hitler. Sila talaga yung pumasok ngayon nung nagapi si Hitler sa Germany. Kaya sila talaga yung nakagapi kay Hitler. Pero maging mabait pa rin sila, binigay pa rin nila sa allies yung division kung saan sila dapat. Ito yung British, ito yung American, ito yung Russian. Ganon ang nangyari. So, ang nangyari ngayon, nagkaroon ng military operations, special military operation para gapiin ang mga neo-Nazis na sa army na siyang pumapatay sa mga Russian-speaking people. Hindi in-honor yung Minsk Agreement. Hindi in-honor na pinirmahan. Umatras na yung mga Russian noon nung pinirmahan yun nagpagitna itong tagapagulo. Hindi ko na ibabanggitin ng pangalan, baka magalit lalo sa akin. Hindi, nagpagitna. Hindi, nagpatuloy ang gera. Ang isip ni Putin ngayon, special operation. Alisin sila na gumagapi doon sa mga, at saka ang kanyang kondisyon ngayon is i-release na ng Ukraine itong mga teritoryo ng Donbas na Russian-speaking people. Tapos ang gulo.
Just recently, Ukraine's Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba said that talks between Russia and Ukraine will not happen as long as Putin is president, and that Zelenskyy and Putin will never be able to be seen at a negotiating table together. In fact, Ukraine has passed a law banning talks with Russia and reneged on the agreement negotiated in March 2022 in Turkey. The first and probably the last time that Putin and Zelenskyy met was at the table in Paris together with French President Emmanuel Macron and German Chancellor Angela Merkel. Putin, on the other hand, said that Russia is always ready to negotiate an end to hostilities, but he has already declared that the 4 regions he had annexed have become citizens of Russia forever. Reporting, this has been Angel Pastor, SMNI News.
And before we end, may you be inspired with the message of the appointed Son of God. I believe in the Father Almighty that He will make a miracle for me. And that's all for today's edition of Newsline World. For more news update, you may visit SMNINewsChannel.com or follow us on our official social media accounts on Rumble, Facebook, and Twitter. For my God and my beloved country, the Philippines, I'm Kristel Guangco. Thank you for watching Newsline World. And thank you to our beloved Pastor Apollo C. Kibuloy, for the opportunity to be part of this program. May you continue to listen on SMNI as it delivers nothing but fair, truthful, and balanced news. For SMNI is your source of